something? Oh, okay. Cool. Who can read? All right, Gabby. Gabby, would you please read the quote on the following slide?
To remain valuable in our economy, therefore, you must master the art of quickly learning complicated things.
Yeah, he didn't actually write force. That was me. Sorry about that. Yeah, Cal Newport, the author of Deep Work. This is a quote from that book. It's all about uninterrupted study and that sort of thing, which is a very good way to learn complicated topics. And this quote is pretty true, especially to work in tech. You have to be able to learn things quickly because it's always changing. I'm not using any of the stuff I used when I first graduated from college, although I am using some stuff that I started just a couple years later. It's all changed. I went away for 3 years and did nothing but management in a job. I came back. Even the frameworks and languages that I had been using before were just wildly different. But it didn't take that long to catch back up. So it's good to know how to study. So hopefully this will help a little bit. So let's talk about what to expect from this boot camp and what we expect of you. Expectations. First, it's a lot of hard work. It may seem overwhelming. You will learn a ton in a very short time, but it may not feel like it. One of my former students and a former co-teacher of this class said that it wasn't the first boot camp he took, but the long boot camp that he took a 12-week program. He got to about week 8 and just felt like he hadn't learned a thing. And he told his teacher his concern, and his teacher suggested he go back and look at his week 1 homework. So he did, and he was like, oh yeah, I guess we did learn a lot. Thing is, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So it can be kind of discouraging. Don't let that get you down. You're learning a lot in a short time, and you will not know everything, and you never will, and that's okay. You'll learn a lot. So, tips. Tip number 1. Who wants to read that slide? Go for it. You get out what you put in. Yes, it's true. So the more you work, the more you'll get out of it. Push yourself to do all the homework and maybe even go beyond the homework. If you get everything finished, there will be multiple levels of homework most nights, probably every night. Do it all, and if you do that, maybe go a little further. Make it spiffy. And because the goal, this is not graded, of course. The goal is not to do just enough to pass. The goal is to learn as much as you can in a short, concentrated time. So if you already get what's going on in the homework, go a little further, enhance it, make it special, and you'll get more out of it for sure. The available material is limitless. There's this big fat thing called the web, which we'll talk about more in just a few minutes if you haven't heard of the web. So don't be afraid to do that. Let me tell you about 2 hypothetical students, Bill and Ted. Both are excellent. But Bill always did his homework. He even did the super mega bonus credit, even the super mega bonus credit hyper fighting when that was available. But then he stopped. And Ted kept going. Ted made it look nice. Ted looked up some other fancy JavaScript features that he could add to make his even better. And you know what happened? Both have jobs. Bill is a respected documentary filmmaker, but Ted is John freaking Wick. Come on. Which would you rather be? Tip number 2. Try to solve the problems yourself. It may hurt, but that's just your brain exercising. If you're not getting it, here's some steps to help you get through it. Number 1, break it down, right? Break it down into its smallest components. We'll point this out along the way when we do that. If it seems like, okay, make a form that creates a new note and saves it in the database. That's a lot. What about making a form? Can you at least make a form? If you can't make a form, can you at least make an input? If you can't make an input, can you at least make a button? Just start somewhere. Can you make a blank page? Break it down to its smallest components, and it'll help. And remember, documentation is your best friend. We'll talk about documentation throughout the class. We'll look up stuff in class together so you get used to the idea. But really, it's good stuff, and it will help you along the way. And what's your second best friend after documentation? Google, right? I'm a Google developer expert too. I can write code, but only if I have access to Google. There's nothing wrong with using Google. Do it. So try to prob the solvents yourself. But conversely, tip number 3, don't stay stuck too long. So here's a guideline for that. Break it down, read the documentation, Google it, and then spend another 15 minutes. Then ask. Don't go forever without asking, or you might find that you spent an hour looking at something, and if you had just asked, it was a tiny little typo that we can find very quickly. So don't be afraid to ask if you get stuck on something small. But first, do try to break it down. If you're doing some overwhelming task, do a small task that will get you there. So break it down, read the documentation, Google it, and give it another 15 minutes. Similarly, and as far as getting help, that can be from us or it can be from each other. Don't be afraid to ask your classmates for help. You're all doing the same problems. And as tip 3A will tell you, you should help each other, because helping each other helps you learn it better. If you get your homework really fast and someone else asks you for help, in order to explain it to them, you're going to have to understand it a lot better than you have to just to get the work done. So it's very helpful for you to help other people as well. You may find that in order to explain it to someone else, you have to understand it on a deeper level than you did just to get the homework finished. Tip number 4, learn from our mistakes. As amazing as we are, inevitably, we will make mistakes live in class. And when we do so, we will not just try to fix it real quick when nobody's looking. We'll walk you through the troubleshooting process. Sometimes we will make mistakes on purpose so that we can demonstrate something. There are, I'll tell you another story from a former student of mine. When he took the class he took from me, which was a 7-day, 12-hour-a-day class, it was totally inhumane. It wasn't my idea, that schedule. He had been self-taught prior to that for just a few months, and he was a little discouraged because when he would watch tutorials online and read tutorials online, it just seemed like all the people teaching these classes were just master programmers who just knew everything right off and wrote it correctly the first time. But when you're watching the tutorial videos and things like that, you're seeing the 4th or 5th iteration of this. They've been banging on it for a while, and you're seeing the idealized version. Even this is kind of an idealized version because we've taught it a bunch of times before. But we will inevitably make mistakes live in class. And the compliment that the student paid me was he really liked watching me make mistakes. Because for one thing, it made him feel better, but also he got to see how an experienced person does troubleshooting, and I talk my way through it when I do. There are error messages that you will see inevitably. Everyone gets them, and some of them are not very helpful. They're things like the infamous HP printer PC load letter, but JavaScript, unexpected identifier, stuff like that, or expected parentheses, got, comma. What the heck does that mean? So, you will get those error messages, so pay attention when I screw up so that you get an idea, this one usually means that. We'll point it out when it happens, because it will. Tip number 5, don't compare yourself to others. Everybody learns things differently. Everybody here has done some programming before, but you still all come with different levels of experience. Some of you have done stuff with the web before. Some of you haven't probably. Some of you may already know a little JavaScript. Some of you may not. That's okay. Everybody learns differently. Don't worry about what the person next to you is doing and how far ahead they are. You know things that they don't as well. It's not helpful to compare yourself to others. And a corollary, don't be a know-it-all. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare how awesome you are to how much everyone else sucks. Because again, they know things that you don't. And if you are a know-it-all and you're tempted to just show off to the class, just save it. We already know, and we're all your reputation precedes you. We're all very impressed. You don't need to prove anything. We know you're the best, okay? So please ask all the questions in the world. But if you're asking a question, really not to get an answer, but to show off to your classmates how much you already know, because to ask such an intelligent question, you must already be a genius. It's a thing that happens. And every year now we give this warning, and it works. The know-it-alls kind of stopped a little bit. So if you're tempted to just ask to raise your hand and ask a question to just show off, just save it. We're all very impressed already. Cool? Thanks. Number 6, have fun. Yes. Celebrate your wins. When you get something done, even if it's just a tiny piece of some homework, that isn't even a separate step. Celebrate. Because there's a lot to do. So when you do make something work, be happy. Appreciate your progress. And make some friends. This is not a reality show. You can be here to make friends. Memories that last a lifetime, folks. That's right. And build some cool stuff. You can do it. Believe in yourself, as I believe in you. You ready to party? All right. One person is ready to party.